Cliff, you may want to just bring your question to
Sure.
the plenum.
So here's the first question. I've just showed you that retreatants show more sadness than controls in response to films of human suffering, and those who practiced more compassion meditation had longer durations of sadness. Is increased sadness part of the developmental course of the cultivation of compassion?
되게 나온다서 인지심 추대어디 저다 가져래.然后 동네 중심 추대도 되게 많이 되거든.
So His Holiness would invite Alan to repeat what he earlier said, maybe elaborate a bit when he talked about how the sense of disequilibrium that you experience as a result of cultivating compassion is different from the kind of disequilibrium that you experience when you face your own suffering. Alan, you want to?
I just read, but His Holiness's comment earlier on this.
No, you made that point about compassion.
Yeah.
I think this morning, I think you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's relevant.
About it's disturbing the mind or not?
Yeah.
That one. Aha. Just that when you are cultivating compassion, the calmness, the equilibrium of the mind is disturbed. You don't watch those scenes and just kind of look with complete kind of bland expression or the internal feeling. It's not just bland, relaxed, comfortable, but there's really a disruption, a turbulence that arises. But number one, it's reality-based. It's not because one is distorting some perception of reality, but it's reality-based. And the disturbance is more on the surface of the mind rather than getting down to the deep and distorting or, how do you say, creating turbulence in the core. And so it is, in my understanding, that type of empathetic sorrow at the other's suffering, or others, and it can also happen, seeing someone else expressing tremendous rage or malevolence, malice. If you see someone else expressing tremendous malice, that too can arouse compassion. They may be quite happy, if not happy, but not unhappy, when they are striking, like these soldiers. But one may feel the sadness and then the compassion, not only for people who are suffering, but for people who are sowing the causes of suffering, as in manifesting malice. So this is something we would expect from meditation. Seeing someone else expressing malice might first, without training, arouse a sense of contempt, disgust, anger. But once you're practicing more, then instead of these negative emotions, there would be first the empathy of sadness that they are doing this, and then out of that empathy arising compassion.
So when does the sadness become the near enemy?
This is straight from the Theravada. I've not seen this in Tibetan literature, but the near enemy, it's the Zumba, it's the false facsimile, and it's from the Theravada. Buddha says, Visuddhimagga. So they say, near enemy and far enemy. So the near enemy is the false facsimile. Very similar, but not the same. And so so simply the sadness, the feeling with, can definitely give rise to compassion. And we, the three of us remember Genji Doten's comments in this regard, that this precedes the actual flowering of compassion. And it really must be there. If there's no feeling with, it's probably not genuine compassion. But on the other hand, one may fall into this kind of sadness with no powerful arousal of a yearning, an aspiration, may you be free. Why couldn't you be free? Some vision, as Matthew so eloquently said, seeing where compassion really arises, seeing there is a possibility of freedom, that it's not hopeless. And that's when compassion can really arise. And again, Yeshe Tomten, when we interviewed him, said, when that compassion strongly arises, when you see there's a possibility of freedom, the sadness diminishes. But now, if one does not arise to the full flowering, so the sadness is there, the empathy is there, so compassion might arise, but then instead of the flower manifesting, the sadness then just goes into more sadness. One sees a ceiling perhaps of helplessness, of hopelessness. And then, now you're all the sadder. And now it's just sadness, feeding sadness, going into despair. And the despair, the tears are still there. When it tears, the sadness is clearly there, so one might think, oh, this person is so compassionate, or I'm so compassionate, feel so sorry about. But in fact, it's the near enemy, because it's actually obstructing the flowering of compassion, because it has no way out.
So in the context of cultivation of compassion in the Buddhist tradition, that cultivation needs to be complemented with the application of insight.
그래서 땅에라 동네에 chana sambe tungye tela tungye jue duji tungye kan leswa.
So then, since compassion is a state of mind that aspires other to be free from suffering or relieved from suffering, with respect to the suffering that you wish the other to be relieved from, of course, in Buddhism we speak of different levels of suffering: the obvious, everyday, evident suffering, suffering of change, and suffering of conditioning. So, and also different forms of compassion may arise. A kind of compassion that is focused on the suffering, which is in fact the results, consequences of actions that the other commits. So there could be a suffering that is focused more on the resultant suffering, and then giving rise to a sense of unbearableness of that suffering of other. Or there could be a compassion which is directed more to the causal stage, where the person who is engaging in a destructive act is in fact contributing towards the conditions that would later lead to the suffering. And focused on that, one can feel a sense of unbearableness to that person's creating the condition for suffering.
Unbearable compassion for that.
Party victim to
So from the Buddhist point of view, if we were to look at this 2-minute film clip that you showed, from the point of view of this cause and effect, when you see the actual scene of suffering, of devastation, of pain and injury and death and so on, we're really looking at the resultant level. So these are experiences that the people are actually undergoing.
Usually I'm saying the victim side, like us, with Tibetan, victim side, suffering, very serious. But that is the result of one's own previous karma, our own past mistake. So now that, because of the causality, now close chapter now. Closing. Now that the soldier who really feel, I done something good, I bring a lot of pain on other. These people just start new chapter. They are committing causes of long-term suffering in future. So there is more reason to feel concern or compassion. Clear? Then second, Sanjebe and the Ninjisha, so the Dujik Dungelmin is the Ninjuin and Dujik Dungelmin is the under the Ninjisha understanding, Dujik Dungeton is the
Yes. So another thing that we need to remember is that in the Buddhist context, when we are talking about cultivation of compassion, the suffering that we wish others to be relieved from is principally the third level of suffering, the suffering of conditioning.
Can you explain it though?
You better explain it.
It's the third and deepest level of suffering that corresponds directly to what Buddhists call renunciation, or this profound aspiration to achieve liberation. So it's not just from manifest suffering, but it's our fundamental vulnerability to suffering because of grasping onto it. It is our very vulnerability to mental afflictions, our capability, our vulnerability to be dominated by mental afflictions. Anyone who is so vulnerable is worthy of this deepest form of compassion, starting with ourselves.
Oh, that kind of compassion, very much sort of related with the wisdom, which bring sort of at least some sort of conviction, or the root of suffering can eliminate. With that feeling, there is possibility to overcome this suffering, yet due to ignorance, suffer. Then some kind of
compassion,
kasota,
aspiration, and then sense of unbearableness. So this also brings a sense of courage.
You see the possibility of overcome that. So that brings, you see, there are some positive element also there. So no reason to,
So then you realize that there is no need to be demoralized and lose hope and feel that, just give up, that there's nothing one can do.
So strong feeling of concern but no element of discourage. You see purpose and possibility. And through that way, 다 닝제 마음들이 다 닝제지.
So from
다
that,
감도 다 가지는 거 다. 무슨 걸 그도 아니야 이거보다.
so from that point of view, one can actually be able to understand the perspective of these young soldiers who are all pumped up, and feel compassion for them.
그래서 안다 되게 쉬워 거리 가서 엘리멘트 뭔고 있어도 돼요.
So as we touched upon this earlier, again, back to complexity. So many factors involved.
So
되는 그건 부디 자도 못 가야 되는데.
Otherwise, there is no
Then you
need
put it
for.
in.
There is no need. If you look at the Tibetan Buddhist canon, there are over 100 large volumes belonging to Kangyur, and then over 200 volumes belonging to the commentarial canonical collection. So, if there is no complexity and many multiple factors involved, there will be no need for all of these multiplicity of volumes.
So you this morning talked about the importance of health and doing things for your own health.
Yes.
So we have some evidence that telomerase may reflect an important health state that relates to this psychological functioning. From the Buddhist point of view, is there an outlook or a concept that captures something so central about inner life that your longevity might depend on it?
In Buddhist text, there is reference to something called 7 types of sung. What like vital forces? Yeah, vital forces. And then this is in some ways connected to the idea of there being internal elements, 5 elements that are part of the human body, and external, how they are related to the external 5 elements. And within the internal elements, there are grosser levels and subtle levels. So the understanding in the Buddhist tradition would be that the changes at the level of the grosser elements are results of change to the level of the subtle elements. And at the subtle internal elements, the changes there is function of an interaction between the subtle energy and subtle consciousness. And it is in this
consciousness.
Consciousness. So, and it is in this way, and His Holiness's own hunch is that this may be, somehow related to maybe the immune function or, various substances within the body that are so central to one's life and also health. But His Holiness is saying this is his own speculation.
So as a calm mind, of course, affect those subtle sort of elements. More normal. No disturb.
More balance.
More balance. So that effect on grosser level of body element, more normal.
So I have one final question. So this is the question. What is the role of one's worldview in facilitating and motivating effective meditation practice? How can we, in a secular context, create the strong motivation to practice with determination for the benefit of all? Because part of, I know, your interest is in not just philosophical dialogue and term definition, but actually how knowledge of contemplative practice can be beneficial to all of humanity. But we've talked many times about how difficult it is at the beginning, how much effort it takes. So if it's very effortful, and you don't have a worldview that says, I'm doing this to attain liberation, how do you phrase the practices that give you such motivation without that worldview, in a Western secular worldview, or whatever your worldview is? What is the relationship of worldview to this motivation to practice these techniques?
No.
No.
At the first day, I already expressed.
No, mentioned.
I mentioned. I think everybody wants happy home, happy world. There is no economic crisis. The elder Nobel laureate brother,
Bishop Tutu.
Israel,
Elie Wiesel.
Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel, his money lost.
Yes.
So some of his, I think, constructive work also suffer. So recently, I was in Italy, no, not Italy, Czech Republic, and one of my Italian friend, I don't know whether millionaire or not. In any way, he was a businessman. He also used to have some business sort of project in China. Then I asked him, so I'm not an economist, but you see, people say market force. So you see, things much depend on the market force. So at the same time, market force is something beyond human control. Even those big, because of the bank, market force
So even the major financial institutions are forced to act according to how the markets behave.
So market force seems to be beyond human control. But market force itself is human creation. So I asked that businessman this question. You see, something human creation, but it looks beyond human control. Then he says, too much greed, speculation. Speculation is to come from fear or too much greed.
Great love.
And also there is immoral. Without knowing exact, just. So
you really create things.
Truthful 말봐. This is not truthful. And not transparent. This economic institution. So he mentioned that is one causes of this global economic crisis. Now, this shows clear. Even today's economic crisis, ultimately related with
Mental state.
Mental state. Intelligence, smart, but lack of moral principle. So it's related with emotion or mind. Then obviously, everybody is saying peace, world peace, world peace.
They say it?
I think in a free country, I think peace, I think genuine desire. In the former Soviet Union, and also now I think North Korea and People's Republic of China, I think they always say peace, peace, peace. But that peace means simply release few pigeons. Yeah. So one time, I have a sort of experience. I think 1979. My first visit to Soviet Union. So then I met some the Russian sort of journalist. And some of them, force because put the word peace-loving nation in my mouth. I refuse. I did not repeat that word. Then one correspondent lost temper. So I think when Iraq crisis about to happen, the people come to street from Australia up to United States. I think these are genuine people, genuine expression.
Yes.
Not manipulated by someone, or politician, or economist. I don't think. Just ordinary people really do not want bloodshed.
That's right. Yes.
And really, of course, except maybe children, television or bloodshed or something, like that. Maybe because of
they find it enjoyable. But
no, but sensible people always feel blood, bleeding, dying. because of that
Crying.
expression of
No,
pain.
pain.
Very sad. Very sad. So now that is the reason in ecology,
Yes.
many problems we are facing today is essentially our own creation. It's clear. These problems, maybe ecology directly, maybe too much because of use of
Fossil fuel.
Oh, that also greed, discontentment, like that. So in any way, these problems, we want less problem, these things. But if you go more depth, these problems ultimately create from here. Therefore, because there is no point to neglect about our inner mind, which is the key factor, bring happiness, even physical condition, poor. Physical facility,
Facilities.
poor. Person can be very happy person. One billionaire, very rich. As a person, very unhappy person. So clearly, suffering, one's own sort of peace of mind, happy mind, happy mood, much depend here. Then, in the family level, or community level, or global level, the mind is very important. As important, even more important than matter. So matter is concerned, we quite advanced. Now, up to now, I think we neglect about this inner world. So now, therefore, I feel, as I mentioned yesterday or at the beginning,
No.
so that's my view. Not talking about nirvana or next life. Simply, the more happier life, this life,
Within this life. No?
and our society, our global community.
No.
That's all.
That's all. So
So here,
Yeah.
I think the public, at least you see, because of the big portion of humanity, I think more eager listen scientist word rather than Lama's word. Oh. So we have the responsibility. Everybody have this responsibility. So your side, through your own profession, make contribution. And those religious people, from their own profession or their own way. And here, one very important is the mother's role. Mother's role. In order to bring healthy, compassionate children or younger next generation, mother have, I think, very, very important role. So, of course, this is unrelated. Unrelated.
Well, no, we still have some time. In a few.
네, 렉자다가 영어 말당하지.
I haven't come here to give a lecture, so it's only
I often, you see, telling the public the talk. I think Riji maybe heard that new Koyamarada.
maybe you have not heard this.
And then you also heard. What I'm saying, human history and very, very early period,
Early stage. No?
the whole concept of leadership, everybody equal. I think very harmonious, very good. So usually that I call original Marxism. Marxist society. Everybody equal. So when I introduced myself as a Marxist the other day, our great sort of monk and scientist, Matthew, have a little reservation. So in any way, so that society, no concept of leadership. Everybody equal. Work together. Whatever they get, share together. Very good. Then population increasing. Then gradually, you see, we and they, that concept increase. Then it needs leadership. So idea of leadership come. At that time, no education, no rule of education, no education. So only physical force, physical strength. So that is the basis of male dominance. Come. Male usually used to come forward. Female take care in the home, in their children, like that. Then education. Gradually education has that developed. And the important role of education. Then more equal. Now here, among the scientists, and also among the Buddhist nuns, also like that. Now education brings more equality. Now today, 21st century, education not lacking. Right.
Not lacking.
Technology, these things also not lacking. What is lacking is compassion. In that respect, female, biological factor, I think more sensitivity about others' pain. That old lady,
Yes.
I think crying.
Yes.
Usually, female, I think more sensitive about others' pain. Biologically, you see, they have more sort of the energy out of affection. So, they take care the child. Even birds, some others are mammals. The mother truly sacrifice their own sort of the privilege in order to protect their children. This is biological factor, not religion, isn't it? Perhaps some, as I mentioned earlier, pigeon or some other rabbit, when they fed well, no immediate sort of danger, then seems they are good meditator.
How clear?
So the biological factor, the female more sort of sensitive about others sort of suffering. Therefore, I feel, I publicly appeal, many occasions I appeal public. Now female take more active role regarding promotion of human compassion and bring new generation more compassionate sort of person. So that's how I really feel. So we male, just put the seat there, finish. Then go here and there, and try to seek another one.
More seats.
So those birds, or cats, or dogs also is like that. The father, there's no longer real sense of sort of responsibility to look after these things. Human being, because of our intelligence, a little better, but basically more or less same. So mother, female, I think lifelong have some kind of sense of responsibility. So now that must translate into the society, right? That biological advantage, I think, must implement. So I'm quite sure if all leaders, political leaders, female, maybe less warfare, I feel. Of course, some exceptional female is very bad, very strict.
Like Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah. Thank you. What a wonderful answer.
I would like to return to this, unless Your Holiness has something else to say.
No.
Would like to return to this morning's presentation.
No, Amishi.
Amishi, sorry.
It's not related to anything we were just talking about, but I have a question.
Maybe I can add something just to step out of the interpreter's role. Cliff, you mentioned about the role of sadness in
Yes.
the experience of compassion, and as I understand it, I think there is a very strong recognition that sadness is an important component of an experience of compassion. For example, in Asanga's text, Bodhisattva Bhumi, he, as part of a compassion training, talks about meditation on 100 different forms of suffering.
동의 자서 제 가사 미스
동의
제주직셔 동의 자서 제
So there is a strong emphasis placed on reflecting upon the pain and suffering and actually meditating upon suffering as part of a path to cultivating compassion. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Your Holiness, I just wanted to follow up on your comments about gender differences and ask, given what you've said, if there are differences in the training of compassion in men and women. Is it easier to train compassion in women compared to men, given the biological propensity that you describe? And if that's true, we should be looking for gender differences in our research. In some of the work we've done, we've actually found some gender differences which are consistent with the perspective that Your Holiness described. But I'm just interested in training of compassion, whether teachers have noticed differences between men and women along the lines that you suggest.
I don't know. But my sort of the reason is, in fact, unbiased, trained compassion come from seed of our normal compassion. That is biased compassion, biological factor. That take as a seed. Then with training, with reason, expand the biased, more normal, biological sort of
Ordinary level compassion.
some good thing. Now, with help of training, our effort, and reason, and further goes, then reach unbiased compassion. So therefore, biologically, female more sensitive about other suffering, maybe helpful to useful to train
To train further.
to reach the unbiased compassion through training. That's my calculation. Not scientific research.
So it's not something that is based on actual research done.
Just about the sadness. We know that people who don't feel sadness for others' suffering, like psychopaths, they also can develop further altruism and compassion. So clearly, in the text, it describes that we should feel in all possible way, in all forms, the suffering of others to develop sadness, so that the powerful compassion and altruistic love come on top of it. Now, if we stop at the level of sadness, then we fall in despair or in burnout in modern terms. So, and it's very perceptible if you just stagnate in sadness. But then, when unconditional love and compassion come on top of it, then, as His Holiness said, the courage, and with the wisdom. And His Holiness, I want just to say one example that His Holiness gave. He said, if you see someone from the aeroplane that's fallen in the middle of the sea, and there's no way for that person to be saved, and you just say, no, what a pity, it's terrible. Now, if there's an island very near, hidden in the mist. But you know that person could reach to that. There's a possibility of coming out. Then, of course, your compassion. May that person reach the island, because there's a possibility. Will be much greater. So, sadness is a necessary basis, but we should definitely go further with wisdom and compassion.
One machine, Fernanda, scholar.
This is follows up.
One of my friend is a good scholar. One day he came to see me and very sad face. I asked, what's wrong?
So you better translate it, so long.
Deep emotional disturbance. Upsetting his whole nervous system.
Then I asked, what causes? And he mentioned to me, he sometimes he meditate on impermanence. So as a result, he developed this soul. So that is something that he has already 처음 문구지 예대로 되기. 배나 대화, 절바, 대연셔. 그래서 뒤에 사무실 선보주에 이나 다 메다가 삼다. 엔테네 좀 전에 동네도 순서를 쉬우데 도균이 순서 도가지고 순서를 쉬우데 걸음이 세 순도와. 네. 봐. 그 직도가 그 possibility지도가. 동네들이 개야지. 때문에나 엔 동네도 순서 가야. 들레 알아도 창도 교신 얘기 약실을 봐. 좀 크게 거 말했으면 내 샤브도 지수는 약실을 봐. 지수금도 봐. 그래서 그 미리 좀 이제 뒤치고. 다 안되데 미다고 겁니. 등생 상황도 송 인도산에 깨여버지도 통. 아니 딱을 내가 말이 있어도 건바 있나? 저도 와. 딱 그렇게 하냐? 다 시그리 넘치는 이런 소로 받대고.
So this monk, who was actually a good scholar, but it turns out that he was not doing the impermanence meditation in the correct way. So he came to see His Holiness looking really sad and disturbed. So he was emotionally disturbed. So His Holiness asked him what was the reason. He said, well, I've been very intensely meditating on death and impermanence. So it seems that he hasn't done the meditation in the proper way, because of course, if the awareness of death and impermanence is based on a deeper appreciation of the preciousness of the human condition and human existence.
And ability.
And then the potentials that the human existence accords you to spiritually advance, then awareness of impermanence and death will help you release from your grasping at a sense of permanence. So you recognize... So it's not that this person was afraid of death, but he was kind of obsessed with, not wasting time. Because with this, so it seems that he hasn't been doing it properly, because even in a meditation like impermanence needs to be situated within a wider context so that it serves the right purpose. So if you look at the historical, Buddha, when he taught the teaching, public sermon, when he taught the first teaching, it's the Four Noble Truths, he didn't stop at just teaching suffering and its origin, but he moved on to the third, which is the cessation of suffering, and the path, which is the fourth leading to suffering. Because if it's all about suffering and its origin, then there is not much point in actually contemplating that, because it will just make you more and more miserable.
Demoralized.
And then all of his... and then they will be suffering from emotional disturbances and sense of kind of, being totally hopeless.
Having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
All of his followers would have nervous breakdown.
Yeah. So if that is the case, it's better for the Buddha to give total license and freedom to enjoy life and be hedonistic, drink and whatever.
Eat, drink, and be merry.
So it looks like I'm just rambling like a madman now.
There is one piece of observation that Matthew made about burnout, and it's related to this.
Burnout
So now in the United States, because of the Iraq War, there are hundreds of thousands of soldiers with trauma. psychological post-traumatic stress syndrome, and the army caregivers, the psychologists, the chaplains, they have secondary trauma.
아멘. 프랑스리.
So the United States Army is now reaching out to contemplative Buddhist practitioners for wisdom in how to promote resilience of caregivers so they can keep seeing soldier after soldier who is so damaged in their heart and their mind. But they have very little time to become resilient. The Army issues something called the Resiliency Training Program, which consists of a 20-minute questionnaire, a 17-minute movie, and they check in with you 1 year later after a plan for self-care on 5 points. That's it. They give this to everyone, and it does very little. So, in a situation where there cannot be much contemplative practice, and there is a very tight schedule, what would you say to a gathering of Army caregivers of how to hold in real time, like a kind of working meditation, of how to see these soldiers one after another?
That's difficult to say. Of course, I have no experience. Not expert, very difficult. I don't know.
So people like yourself will be the ideal person to do some
we already have
exploration.
Some sort of,
The result is
because of that concrete sort of program. We already there. So share.
I already talked to them. I told them about this. And John Kabat-Zinn.
So it's only saying that in order to do that, you don't need to wear some strange hats.
Not necessarily to act as a guru. Just a scientist.
That's right.
And share your experience. That's much better.
That's very good. That's beautiful.
And you should not use the Buddhist technique. You should not use the word Buddhist technique.
Yeah.
Simply, mental training.
So Len's suggestion is that even using the word Buddhist contemplative practice may not be the right one. So mental practices or mental
There was
cultivation.
a strong issue. People were worried from a Christian point of view.
Yes, that's right. And I, since many years, as soon as I heard, I have some desire. Perhaps to some people, if you can do, I think please should do. That is, in Christian tradition, in ancient time, there was tradition of deep meditation. So one Greek island, I heard no female allowed, or no sort of takasure, or ordinary people.
No outsiders, no visitors allowed.
But they are still carrying the long
Tradition.
the meditation sort of tradition, according to Christianity. The many part say discontinue, but they are still continue. I heard. If there is Christian sort of tradition, that's Christianity. The same meditation. And in Christian countries, that's very useful, very helpful. Then some Jewish, according to Judaism, I have a few occasions, dialogue with some Jewish
Scholars.
rabbi.
And scholars.
Rabbis, one time it's a rabbi,
I think it's Zaman Shakta. Zaman Shakta.
So they call mysticism.
Kabbalah. Hasidic.
So seems to say in these different sort of tradition, I think there is a method. There is a tradition of method to check or to make shape of our mind. So we can take all from all these traditions. Then Hindu, no question. 부디즘에서는 지금 new fashion 수준에 약합니다.
Because one of the dangers of using the term Buddhist this and Buddhist that, there might be an element of novelty and fashion,
That's not good.
which is not helpful.
이 주대 부디즘 장자 주단에서도
Because it may also lead to the kind of letting down Buddhism, making it very watered down.
车了嘛，车个这几多，到现在年个是谁嘛叫？
Generally, there is a saying that if you know a little, it's quite dangerous.
So now that's actually there is danger happening like that without knowing the real depth. Yes.
I think there's still lots of questions, but we have already reached 3 o'clock. We still have time for the remaining questions to bring it back to these different topics and ideas. And so, looking forward to gather tomorrow. Everybody, good night.